Hi, hello, I'm Louise Quick, welcome to Quick Histories, and with Halloween just around the corner, what better time to look at a more creepy, spooky history fact? So today we're going to be looking at the fact that Oliver Cromwell was beheaded about 2.5 years after he actually died. So yeah, let's figure out how that one happened. The British leader Oliver Cromwell was executed quite brutally in 1661, but this was actually 2.5 years after he had already died of natural causes. So his body was dug up, or disinterred as I think it's more correctly known, and tried for regicide, accused with killing King Charles I. Unsurprisingly to everyone involved, Oliver Cromwell's body, the dead body of Oliver Cromwell that was put on trial was found guilty of regicide and executed in a really gruesome way. They hung his body in chains in public, they then beheaded the body, threw the body into a common grave, and stuck his head on a spike and put that above Westminster Hall for everyone to see. Even more gruesome is the fact that the head apparently stayed on the spike over Westminster Hall for more than 20 years. Who knows what state it got into, don't want to think about it, until the story goes that during a storm it fell off, or it was stolen, or it just fell off because it was a severed head that had been on a spike for 20 years. But either way, after about 25 years, it was gone, and it passed between hands, and the story goes that it was finally buried in the grounds of Cambridge University in the 1960s. Some people even question whether by the 1960s this was really still Oliver Cromwell's head. Other people even question whether it was even Oliver Cromwell's body that was actually executed. But important question, why was Oliver Cromwell's body beheaded 2.5 years after he died? To answer this, we need some historical context. More specifically, we need historical context about the English Civil War. The English Civil War can be frustratingly hard to understand and explain, but we're going to give it a go anyway. Basically, in 1642, the Civil War broke out. On one side, you had King Charles I and his royalists, or the Cavaliers, and on the other side, you had the parliamentarians and all the Roundheads. To summarise a really complicated bit of history, the Civil War came about because Charles I was a bit of a git and wasn't listening to Parliament. Parliament got annoyed, the Civil War happened. By January 1649, the Royalists had lost, King Charles I had been arrested, and then he'd been tried and executed. So they beheaded the King of England, which is huge. It's a huge bit of history, absolutely bonkers, crazy stuff. And one of the key people who had signed Charles I's death warrant was Oliver Cromwell. Cromwell had risen to power during the Civil War by leading the New Model Army against Charles I. So after King Charles I was executed in 1649, England and eventually Scotland and Ireland were ruled as a republic under the power of the parliamentarians. There was no monarchy, no kings or queens. That's what a monarchy is. But yes, so this was a big deal in English history and British history. What's ironic though is that in 1653, Oliver Cromwell was named Lord Protector of the realm of England, Scotland and Ireland, which is essentially being a king, but without the crown. Even more ironic is that when he died in 1658, a huge sort of state funeral fit for a king was put on for him. There was like a wooden effigy of him that apparently had a crown and robe on like a king. There was this huge procession that went through London, leading the body to Westminster Abbey, where he was buried like a king. Also like a king, his title of Lord Protector was inherited by his eldest son, Richard. Although unfortunately Richard didn't do a very good job, and less than a year later he renounced the title. Then, just 1 year after that, the people that were sort of remained in power or with some sort of influence actually invited Charles II back to rule. Charles II, son of Charles I, the one who lost his head, had been in exile in France for almost 10 years, and in May 1660 found himself back in England being crowned as king. What I've always found quite strange is the fact that Charles II is always remembered as like the merry monarch and the party prince. Maybe not the party prince, I might have made that up. Known for, bringing back the monarchy. Everyone was really excited he brought back the monarchy and people were allowed to celebrate Christmas again and cute dogs were named after him. But actually his reign, or at least the start of his reign, was pretty dark. It was Charles II that actually ordered that Oliver Cromwell's body be dug up or exhumed or disinterred and tried for regicide. This was it must have been both revenge for the death of his father, but also a serious power move against any anti-royalists who were still in the country. Then, for the entirety of his reign, Oliver Cromwell's head was on a spike over Westminster, like as a marker of the start of his reign, the end of his reign. Dead man's head on a spike. Add in the fact that a few years later, London was hit by the Great Plague of London, which was promptly followed by the Great Fire of London. And yeah, Charles I's reign, at least at the beginning, not an exciting party time, I don't think. Maybe you could party between the plague and the death. But yeah, maybe not. So there we go. Halloween fact all about Oliver Cromwell's head being cut off his body several years after he died. Nice and gruesome for you. Thank you for watching. If you like this fact, give it a thumbs and a like up. Thumbs and a like up? That's not a phrase. Give it a thumbs up and a like, depending on where you're watching this. If you are watching this on YouTube, please click subscribe. And if you feel like you've learned something new today, that's great. And feel free to buy me a coffee on my Ko-fi page. That would be brilliant. And what history fact do you want next? Let me know. Era, person, event, topic, random word. Let me know and I will try and find a history fact about it. Otherwise, I'm off to stuff a load of sweets in my mouth while watching Hocus Pocus and tell myself that I'm celebrating an ancient pagan tradition. History fact.